They say Atlantis sank beneath the sea, but what if it didn't? In a quiet town where gulls cried and the sea kissed the cliffs, a man named Elias lived alone in a weathered cottage. He wasn't a sailor. He wasn't a scholar. He was just someone who liked silence and the company of books. Elias had spent most of his life by the ocean, but it never felt old to him. The waves always sounded like they were speaking, a language too old to understand, but too familiar to ignore. As a boy, he would sit for hours on the rocks, watching the tide come in. Sometimes, he saw things in the water, shapes that moved too gracefully to be fish. His father once told him, "The ocean holds stories we were never meant to hear." And his mother warned him, "Dreams that begin at sea often end beneath it." But Elias listened anyway. Now grown, he spent his days fixing nets for fishermen and his nights reading stories no one else cared about. One book in particular, a battered copy of Plato's Dialogues, sat open on his desk more than any other. He didn't read it for philosophy. He read it for the lost city whispered inside it. Atlantis. The name itself felt like a lullaby of stone and salt. On a cloudy afternoon, Elias wandered into the oldest bookshop in town. It sat on a narrow alley that smelled of damp wood and brine. The sign above the door read, "Witterson's Books." Inside, the shopkeeper was asleep in a rocking chair, his long white beard rising and falling like a tide. Elias wandered through crooked shelves, each one packed with stories. And there, tucked behind a row of encyclopedias, he found it, a scroll. Old. Yellowed. Bound in twine as fine as spider silk. He blew the dust off and untied it carefully. The paper crackled as it opened. It was a map. But not any map he'd ever seen. No modern names. Just faded coastlines, strange symbols, and one bold word in the middle of the sea, Atlantis. He showed it to the shopkeeper, who stirred, looked once, and mumbled, "You found her," before dozing off again. Elias felt the air change. The weight of the map settled into his hands like it had always belonged there. That night, the waves sounded different, more urgent, more alive. Elias returned home and pulled out every book he owned on Plato, Greek myths, and lost cities. He scribbled notes, traced symbols, and cross-checked coastlines. Plato had written about Atlantis as a warning. He said it was a powerful empire, advanced, rich, and proud. But its people became greedy, and the gods struck it down. In one day and night, Atlantis vanished beneath the waves. But why did Plato say it so plainly? And why had so many people called it fiction, while others insisted it was real? Elias found old sailors' journals. Some spoke of strange compass turns near Gibraltar. Others told of glowing towers seen beneath the surface of the Atlantic. In one journal, a 19th century captain wrote, "I saw a dome of glass beneath the sea, and it watched me back." It wasn't proof. But it was enough. The scroll had come to him for a reason. If you're still enjoying the story until this moment, Please don't forget to subscribe to keep enjoying bedtime stories. Now let's continue from where we stopped. He packed a bag, light but ready. Notebooks, the scroll, a compass, and a flask of water. He left a note on his door, dawn looking. He walked west, tracing the map's lines. Through forests and fields, towns and lonely coasts. He listened to stories in taverns, asked old women for legends, and offered coins to fishermen who'd sailed too far. One night in a seaside inn, a blind man told him, Atlantis isn't lost. It's hiding. In another town, a lighthouse keeper whispered, my father saw a city of lights below the waves. He never sailed again. Elias wrote it all down. And the further west he went, the louder the sea seemed to call him. He camped on the cliffs one night, too far to hear anything but the sea. But he dreamed. In the dream, waves parted like curtains, revealing a glowing city beneath. Spires of coral. Windows of gold. Music without sound. He awoke before dawn. The tide was out farther than he had ever seen. And there, just below the edge of the cliff, were steps. Not natural. Stone. Smooth. Leading into the sea. He stood at the edge, and something in him shifted. It wasn't fear. It was understanding. He had found the door. In the nearest harbor, Elias found a fisherman with a boat made of old oak and patches. The man's eyes were tired but kind. How far you going? He asked. Where the sea remembers, Elias said. The fisherman raised an eyebrow but didn't ask more. They set sail at dawn, the scroll guiding their way. Birds vanished by the second day. The stars began to change. And on the third night, the sea turned black and flat. They drifted. Then, the sea opened. A glowing tunnel formed. Not air. Not water. Something in between. The boat slid into it like falling into a dream. They passed statues, gardens of coral, towers etched with silver lines. And then, Atlantis. Whole. Breathing. Silent. No ruins. No dust. Just beauty. Elias stepped onto the stone path. The boat remained behind him, anchored to the tunnel of light. The city stretched out in every direction, crystal bridges, towers with windows that shimmered like pearl, plazas paved with gold-veined marble. He walked slowly, his footsteps silent against the stone. The air didn't feel like water, but it wasn't air either. Every breath filled him with warmth. Gardens bloomed with plants he couldn't name. Some glowed. Others hummed. A tall, spiral fountain stood in the center of a courtyard, and when he touched the water, it showed him images, scenes from another time. He saw children playing beneath the sea. He saw scholars speaking to stars. He saw kings with faces both kind and cruel. He saw Atlantis alive, its people proud but full of wonder. The city had a rhythm, like a heart. And it was still beating. Thank you for staying with us until this moment. Your subscriptions and like are what motivate us to continue bringing you the best bedtime stories, so don't forget to subscribe. Thank you. Now, let's go back to our story for the night. Inside a great hall, Elias found a floating crystal above a throne. It pulsed like it was breathing. When he stepped closer, the crystal sent images straight into his thoughts. No sound. No voice. Just memory. He saw Atlantis rise. A gift from Poseidon. 10 kings ruled with wisdom. They built marvels, harnessed energy from the earth and stars, and lived in harmony. But pride crept in. Some wanted more. Others sought war. The city, to protect itself, and the world, chose to hide. With the help of their last queen, they turned inward and disappeared beneath the waves. It wasn't punishment. It was choice. And now, Elias understood. The city had called to him. Not for rescue. For witness. Three days passed. Or maybe 3 hours. Time was soft here. Elias wandered the city, taking notes, breathing in the quiet. At night, the city lit itself from within. Lights danced through the towers like stars caught in jars. He spoke aloud sometimes, just to break the silence. He told the city stories about the surface, about electricity, wars, books, music. He wasn't sure if it listened. But sometimes, lights flickered in response. On the final morning, the tunnel of light returned. The boat floated beside him once more. He stepped in without looking back. And the city faded beneath him. Elias returned home. No one asked where he had been. And he didn't offer to tell. But at night, he walked the cliffs again, listening to the waves. He wrote everything. Each page of his notebook told a piece of Atlantis, the beauty, the wisdom, the fall, the choice. He shared only fragments. To those who listened. A curious child. A tired sailor. A woman who dreamed of stars. Some believed. Most did not. But Elias knew the truth wasn't in convincing others. The truth was in remembering. And so he walked. And listened. And sometimes, just sometimes, the tide would pull back farther than it should. And the stone steps waited beneath the sea.